Single envelopment. One division attacks the enemy head-on, while another moves around the flanks to strike from behind, disrupting reinforcements, communications, or attacking from the rear. Hold down position. In this maneuver, tanks position themselves behind hills or cover, so that only the gun barrel is exposed to the enemy. Although this method is still in use today, it has limitations. It's not ideal for flat terrain, and the tank's gun needs sufficient downward elevation. Additionally, if switching from defense to offense, the tank may end up exposing its vulnerable underbelly. Recon by fire. This method involves firing at suspected enemy positions to provoke a reaction, helping to determine if enemies are present or absent. Pincer Movement. When the enemy charges directly at the front, the central units hold their ground while the wings flank the enemy, forcing them to fight on two sides and eventually surrounding them. Sniper Trap. Instead of killing an enemy outright, the sniper deliberately aims to wound, hoping to lure additional enemy soldiers into the open. Once they rush to provide aid, the sniper targets them as well. Foxholes. Two soldiers occupy a small, dugout position for cover when enemies are nearby. With camouflage applied to the entrance, foxholes were originally developed to counter blitzkrieg attacks. Variations existed, such as turret-equipped foxholes used by the Germans and smaller, single-soldier foxholes by the Japanese, which were more effective for ambushes. Creeping Barrage. Artillery fire advances in stages to protect infantry as they move forward toward enemy trenches. This method is more effective than directly targeting trenches, which are often resistant to shelling. However, this tactic requires careful coordination to prevent friendly fire. Salvo. The purpose of this tactic is to catch the enemy off guard and defeat them rapidly, preventing their counterattack. All cannons fire their initial shots simultaneously, making it particularly effective in naval battles, as multiple splashes are easier to spot for determining the firing range. It was predominantly used in World War I and World War II, though modern warfare now often relies on cruise missiles. Blitz. Famously used by Germany during World War II, this tactic involves a fast, concentrated attack that aims to break through the enemy's lines rather than engage them head-on. It relies on a spearhead of mechanized infantry and tanks, supported by artillery and air forces, to keep the enemy off balance. Inverted Wedge. As the center slowly retreats under enemy pressure, the wings move forward to encircle the enemy. Success in this tactic depends heavily on the effectiveness of the wings. Defeat in detail. This strategy is effective against a larger opponent. It involves splitting your force into smaller units, forcing the enemy to do the same. Then, you can direct a large portion of your troops to overwhelm smaller groups of the enemy one at a time, rather than engaging their entire force at once. Oblique Order. A flank tactic where one part of the army focuses on a single side of the enemy, while the other side moves diagonally, allowing for concentrated force to break through the enemy's line. Feighned Retreat. Troops pretend to fall back, enticing the enemy to pursue them into a disadvantageous position. However, this can sometimes lead to an unintended retreat if troops lose discipline. Bounding Overwatch. This tactic involves one part of the team providing covering fire while the other part moves forward. Once the moving team reaches its position, they provide cover, allowing the other part to advance. This back-and-forth movement helps a unit progress while under enemy fire. Crossing the T. A naval tactic where one line of warships crosses in front of the enemy's line, enabling all ships in the crossing formation to fire broadsides, while the enemy ships can only return fire from their front guns. Skirmishing. Skirmishers are spread out ahead of the main force, engaging the enemy with small attacks. Their goal is to delay, disrupt, or lower the morale of the enemy forces. Ambush. A strategy where hidden troops lie in wait for the right moment to strike, surprising the enemy once conditions are in their favor. Swarming. This tactic involves overwhelming an enemy's defenses by attacking with numerous independent units from various directions. It's commonly used in asymmetric warfare, where the attacking side is smaller, and it confuses the enemy with unpredictable attack patterns. Flying Wedge. This formation involves a group moving forward in the shape of a triangle. While it was commonly employed in ancient battles, it still finds use today due to the enhanced situational awareness and field of vision it offers. Police riot teams frequently adopt this method for crowd control. Scorched Earth. This tactic involves retreating while destroying anything that might benefit the enemy, such as food supplies or transport routes. A well-known example is Russia's use of this tactic against Germany during World War II, supported by the vastness of Russian territory and its harsh winter conditions. Air interdiction. This tactic targets strategic locations that, although not an immediate threat, can influence the course of a conflict. There's a difference between tactical and strategic air interdiction. Tactical air interdiction aims for fast results, like attacking supply lines heading to active combat zones. On the other hand, strategic interdiction focuses on long-term outcomes, often hitting infrastructure like roads or bridges. It differs from strategic bombing, which is unrelated to supporting ground forces. Siege. Encircling an enemy's city or stronghold to cut off supplies and prevent escape, trapping them in hopes of forcing surrender due to scarcity or attacking after careful planning. If a ring of fortifications is built around the besieged area, it's known as a contravallation. If a second ring is built outward to defend against allies of the besieged, it's called circumvallation. Mouse holing. Streets are dangerous for infantry since they might not provide adequate cover. Soldiers often blow holes through walls to move between rooms or buildings, avoiding open exposure. Air assault. This involves using aircraft, like helicopters, to transport troops behind enemy lines for a surprise attack from the rear. It's a more modern vertical version of the encirclement tactic. Tank descent. In this approach, infantry ride on tanks and dismount when the final phase of the battle begins. They don't just use tanks for transport. They also provide protection for the tanks against anti-tank attacks. Center peel. It's a modern infantry retreat maneuver, useful when small units need to escape a larger enemy force. It resembles the bounding Overwatch technique. Defense in depth. This strategy focuses on slowing down an attacker rather than stopping them outright. As the attacker advances, they spread themselves thin across a larger area, losing momentum. This allows defenders to launch counterattacks on smaller, isolated enemy units.